Welcome to my viewers. What started as a laid-back birthday plan quickly spiraled into the most disturbing and confusing night of my life. This isn't just a story about breaking a few rules to celebrate with friends. It's a story about something or someone watching us in the dark, something that didn't want us there. If you've ever felt eyes on you in the middle of nowhere, if you've ever had the chilling sense that you were surrounded, you might want to stick around until the very end. I've never been the type to make a big deal out of birthdays. No streamers, no big parties, no loud clubs. I'm just not wired that way. For me, it's usually a quiet dinner with my family or something low-key with close friends. So when my birthday came around one summer, I had dinner with my family, opened a few cards and figured that would be it for the night. But after I got home, 3 of my close friends started texting me, eager to hang out and do something. Nothing wild. We were only 19 and none of us had fake IDs, so hitting the bars was off the table. But one of my friends, Jay, came up with an idea that sounded different and maybe just a little bit reckless. Jay owned a rugged old Jeep, the kind with mud splatters caked into the wheel wells, a few minor dents that told stories, and oversized tires made for terrain most people would never think to drive on. He suggested we head out to one of the state parks about half an hour away and do some night off-roading. Now this park was massive. Miles of winding trails surrounded by thick, dense woods. It was technically illegal to drive on those trails, but Jay had done it before. He swore that once night fell, the place was practically abandoned. No rangers, no hikers, just silence and trees for miles. And since my birthday falls in July, the sun didn't fully set until close to 9. By the time we were all ready, it was just after dusk, right when the deep blues of twilight started to fade into black. Carl brought a bunch of weed, and Joey showed up with a handle of vodka. It was meant to be a little party in the woods, smoking, drinking, hotboxing the Jeep under the stars. Jay, being the driver, was going to stay sober. That made all of us feel safer, or at least it should have. We reached the park a little after 9. The main parking lot was blocked by traffic cones, but as Jay predicted, there were no guards, no patrol cars, no one, just empty woods, and the faint hum of crickets in the distance. He pulled over, hopped out, moved one of the cones and drove in like it was nothing. Once past the entrance, we rolled down a narrow, one-lane road, flanked on both sides by towering trees. You could barely see beyond the first few feet into the woods. It was like driving through a tunnel made of shadows. Eventually, the road opened up to a large gravel lot, almost entirely surrounded by forest, except for the far end, which had a few baseball fields and a rundown playground. Jay didn't stop there. He knew exactly where the off-road trails began. These were meant for hikers, not vehicles, but Jay assured us they were wide enough, and besides, he had done this before. We scanned the area. No other cars, no flashlights in the woods, nothing, so we entered the trail. Once we left the parking lot and turned onto the dirt paths, Jay flicked on his brights. The trail was tight, bumpy and uneven. Branches scraped against the Jeep's doors, and at some points, Jay had to slow to a crawl to avoid hitting trees. But in a weird way, it was fun, like a theme park ride, only real. At one point, the trail opened up into a clearing, and Jay decided to kill the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. No hum of the motor, no crunch of gravel, just the Jeep sitting still in the middle of absolute blackness. Carl lit up a joint. Joey cracked open the vodka, and soon we were laughing, listening to music, and passing the bottle around. The air was warm and sticky. The only light came from the Jeep's interior, casting long shadows onto the nearby tree. There was something freeing about it, about being completely alone in the woods, doing something we definitely weren't supposed to be doing. Then, something cut through the music. A high-pitched sound, brief, sharp and unnatural. All of us Jay quickly paused the song, and in the sudden silence, we looked at each other like, "Did you hear that too?" Each of us muttered variations of, "What the hell was that?" It wasn't an animal call we recognized, not a bird, not a fox, just this piercing, blood-curdling screech that came from somewhere in the woods. Jay turned the headlights back on and scanned the trail ahead. Nothing, just trees and shadows. We didn't want to stay in that exact spot, so Jay drove a little further down the trail. We stopped again, a little more alert now, but still trying to keep the vibe light. Probably just a fox, Joey said, though none of us seemed convinced. We turned the music back on, but kept it low this time. We made drinks in plastic cups. Carl rolled another joint, and things slowly started to feel normal again. At one point, my friends burst out into a hilarious off-key version of Happy Birthday, complete with slurred lyrics and drum beats on the dashboard. Eventually, nature called, and I got out of the Jeep to go pee. I walked just a few steps into the trees, not too far, but far enough that I was alone. That's when I heard it. Crunch. Footsteps. Just a few feet away from me. Slow. Deliberate. I stopped midstream. My heart jumped into my throat. Without finishing, I zipped up and rushed back to the Jeep. "Guys," I said, "I just heard footsteps." My voice cracked slightly. Jay immediately switched on the headlights, and that's when we saw her. Just 10 feet in front of the Jeep stood a woman. Her hood was pulled up over her head. Her posture was stiff, unmoving. Her face was in shadow. We waited for her to say something, to do something, but she just stood there, staring. Jay rolled his window down slowly and asked, "You all right?" She didn't answer. Instead, she took one slow step backward, then another. Then she disappeared into the woods, swallowed by the darkness. That should have been enough to make us leave right then and there. But before any of us could speak, Carl, who had been half zoned out in the back seat, said something that made my blood run cold. "Guys, we're surrounded." I turned and looked out the window. My heart skipped. There, just beyond the edge of the trail, stood 3 more people, each of them wearing hoodies, each one motionless, silent, staring directly at the Jeep. Joey let out a string of curses. Carl screamed, and Jay whipped his head around, just in time for all of us to see a man standing directly behind the Jeep, just outside the rear windshield. His face was lit red by the glow of the taillights. His expression was blank, hollow, unblinking. That was it for me. "Go," I screamed. "Get us out of here." Jay didn't hesitate, slammed the Jeep into gear, and tore down the trail, bumping and jerking over every rock and ditch, as fast as the vehicle would allow. Branches scraped the windows. My drink spilled all over my lap. We were all yelling, some of us crying. Every second on that trail felt like an eternity. When we finally burst out onto the pavement at the other end of the woods, there was a collective gasp. Relief. Real, tangible relief. Jay didn't say a word. He just drove straight home. Once the adrenaline wore off, we tried to make sense of what happened. Maybe they were just other kids messing around in the woods. Maybe it was some elaborate prank. But the way they stood there, silent, motionless, just watching us, it didn't feel like a joke. And their timing, the scream, the woman, the hooded figures, none of it added up. It was a warm July night. Nobody needs to wear hoodies in the middle of summer. Nobody just appears like that without saying a word. And that scream, it definitely wasn't a fox. That night shook all of us. We've talked about it since, trying to make sense of it. But the truth is, we can't, and we've never gone off-roading in those woods again. They say your gut knows things your mind hasn't figured out yet. And looking back now, that gut feeling may have saved my life. Welcome, and thanks for joining me. What I'm about to share isn't easy to talk about, but it's something I'll never forget. Not because it was dramatic or loud, but because it was quiet, calculated, and terrifying in a way I didn't fully understand until much later. This is the story of how a stranger almost kidnapped me at my little sister's 5th birthday party. My sister's party was at one of those tea room type places, the kind designed for little girls who love fairy tales, glitter, and plastic tiaras. The whole setup was pink and sparkly and sugar-sweet, with waitresses dressed as princesses leading the girls in etiquette games and serving them apple juice in teacups. I was 11, almost 12, and firmly in my too cool for this phase, a sixth grader with a chip on his shoulder, determined not to look like a baby in front of anyone, especially strangers. So I stayed far away from the action. I parked myself in a chair out in the hallway with my Nintendo DS, lost in a game while the laughter and squeals of the party echoed from the next room. I remember thinking I was being mature, independent, grown up, but looking back now, I realize how vulnerable I actually was, sitting alone, out of sight, out of mind. It started casually. A woman I didn't recognize walked up to me. She had this friendly smile like the kind you see in commercials for toothpaste or PTA meetings. She bent down a little and asked, "Hey, you're Gloria's kid, right?" Gloria is my mom's name. That caught my attention. I looked up from my DS and nodded. "Yeah." "Oh my gosh," she said, smiling even wider. "I'm Aunt Sarah. You probably don't remember me. It's been so long since we last saw each other. You were just a toddler." I tried to think. Aunt Sarah. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I didn't recognize her face. Still, I'd had plenty of relatives I barely knew. Second cousins, great aunts, friends of the family, who insisted they'd held me as a baby. This didn't feel weird at the time, just one of those family things. She chatted me up like someone who'd known me my whole life, told me how big I'd gotten, asked how school was. I gave the usual polite answers, and she seemed genuinely pleased. It felt natural, comfortable even, and then, like it was the most casual thing in the world, she said, "I brought this huge dollhouse for your sister. It's in the car and too heavy for me to carry alone. Do you think you could help me bring it in?" My first reaction wasn't suspicion. It was guilt. I was the older brother after all. Maybe helping out would make up for not participating in the party. I was just about to say yes, when she sweetened the offer. "I also brought an extra cake," she added. "I haven't told anyone yet. I thought it could be our little surprise. If you help me bring in the dollhouse, you can have the first slice." Now, here's the thing. I wasn't some clueless kid. My parents had warned me about strangers. We'd watched safety videos at school. I knew the classic want some candy scenarios. But this wasn't a creepy man in a van offering candy. This was a woman who knew my mom's name, who said she was my aunt, who talked to me like family. And yeah, I also subconsciously trusted her more. Because she was a woman. That was my mistake. I followed her through a back hallway and out the side door of the tea room. The sun was still out, but the parking lot was mostly empty. Her car was parked awkwardly at the far end, still running, and there was a man in the driver's seat. Immediately, something felt off. Why was the car still running? Why hadn't she parked in a closer spot? Why was that guy just sitting there? I slowed down, and she must have sensed my hesitation because she quickly said, "Oh, that's your Uncle Dennis. He's just staying in the car so we can load the dollhouse faster before the frosting melts on the cake." Her voice was still cheerful, but there was a little edge of urgency in it now, like she needed me to move, and fast. That's when my stomach twisted. The car door was slightly open. The man, Uncle Dennis, she said, wasn't even pretending to smile. He was just watching, silent, still, too still. I stopped walking. Something deep in my gut screamed no. "I think I should go back inside," I said, stepping backward. Her smile vanished. Her face hardened like flipping a switch. "Come on," she snapped. "Just help with the dollhouse. We don't have all day." When I didn't move, she grabbed my jacket sleeve, firm, no longer friendly. I jerked my arm away and yelled, "Stop it, let go of me." Her eyes, those friendly, sugary eyes, turned cold and furious. "Don't make a scene," she hissed. It felt like time froze for a moment. The man in the car shifted like he was about to get out. And then, like a miracle, I heard my name. Not once, twice. My name, my mom's voice, then my aunt's. Loud, urgent. Sarah's head snapped toward the sound.
She let go of my sleeve and bolted to the car. The man slammed the car door shut. As she jumped in, tires screeched. They were gone in seconds. I ran back toward the building. As my mom and aunt rounded the corner, out of breath and panicked, I barely managed to explain what had happened before my mom pulled me into a tight hug. I remember her voice shaking as she said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." My aunt alerted the tea room staff. They shut down every entrance and gathered all the kids into one room, counting them, making sure no one else was missing. Thank God, everyone was safe. The police came soon after. I gave them every detail I could remember: what Sarah looked like, what the car looked like, the man's face, their voices. I described her clothes, her hair, the way she said my mom's name. The officers said I'd done the right thing, that I was brave, but nothing ever came of it. We never heard from the police again. No updates, no arrests, no confirmation, nothing. To this day we have no idea who that woman really was, or how she knew my mom's name. Maybe she'd overheard it earlier in the past. Maybe she'd been watching us long before that day. I think about it often, more than I care to admit. I think about how easy it was, how close I came to disappearing without a trace. All it took was a smile, a name, a fake connection, a believable story. If I had taken 2 more steps, if I had ignored that gut feeling, who knows what would have happened. I try not to dwell on the what ifs, but I do hold on to one thing. I trusted my instincts. That's what saved me. To anyone listening, especially the younger ones, never ignore that gut feeling. It doesn't matter how friendly someone seems or what they say they know. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I was almost 12, old enough to think I knew better, but still young enough to be tricked. Don't let your guard down, no matter where you are, because danger doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a smile and a second slice of cake. Thanks for listening to my story. If this gave you chills, or if you think it's a message worth spreading, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Stay safe out there, and always trust your gut.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever thrown a party that spiraled out of control, not just a little loud or messy? I mean the kind that leaves you questioning what was real, what wasn't, and whether you were truly alone. Because what happened at my 21st birthday wasn't just a party, it was a turning point, one where celebration turned into dread. And I'll never forget the feeling of looking down into a dark foyer and realizing someone was in the house who shouldn't be. Let me take you back. My uncle is one of those people who seems to have it all: money, taste, and a gorgeous house right on the water. His backyard alone looks like something out of a resort brochure. A sprawling lawn, a sleek in-ground pool with LED lights, palm trees lined along the edge of the water, and a surround sound speaker system wired throughout the yard. When he offered to let me use it for my 21st birthday, especially since he was away for the month, it felt like winning the party lottery. And I wasn't about to waste the opportunity. I told all my friends, and told them to tell their friends, as long as they brought their own drinks, the more the merrier. I even plugged in my burner phone to the sound system, and queued up a non-stop party playlist. The first guests arrived a little after 8 p.m., and it didn't take long for things to explode. The yard flooded with people, some familiar, many not. Friends of friends kept arriving in groups, laughing, carrying coolers, stumbling already half drunk. The vibe was electric, chaotic in the best way at first, but around 10 p.m., I noticed something strange. I stood by the sliding glass door, scanning the crowd, and it hit me. I didn't recognize half the people here. I mean it literally. There had to be at least 80 or 90 people in the backyard, maybe more. I had no idea who some of them were, or how they got in, but they looked like they belonged, laughing, drinking, splashing in the pool, so I convinced myself they were friends of someone. Still, I started feeling uneasy. My uncle made it very clear: keep everyone outside. No one in the house unless they were using the bathroom. I had made that rule clear too, But I couldn't watch everyone at once, especially being the birthday guy. Every time someone dragged me into a selfie, offered me a drink, or challenged me to a chug, I lost track of the door. It all spiraled from there. The music was pounding. People were dancing on the patio furniture. A couple of drunk guys jumped into the pool fully clothed. And then the cops came. Several neighbors had filed noise complaints, and the party was officially over. I scrambled to shut everything down. People groaned, but most left without issue. Within 20 minutes, the crowd had thinned to just 10 or so of my close friends. A few hung by the pool, others lounged on the lawn chairs. Eventually, even they trickled away, calling rides or walking off together in groups. It was just me and Rob now, my buddy since middle school. He was completely obliterated, slurring his words, barely able to stand. My uncle had said no one could stay over, but I figured Rob was harmless. He wouldn't even make it up the stairs. He collapsed onto the living room couch, and despite my efforts to get a coherent response, he just groaned and rolled over. Fine, he was staying. I went back outside, shut and latched both side gates, then locked the back sliding door. The yard was a mess of crushed beer cans, soggy towels and tipped over chairs, but cleanup could wait. I did a quick check of the bathroom. Just a couple beer cans on the counter. Not bad. I headed upstairs to crash in one of the extra beds. There were 4. After all, why my uncle didn't allow guests was beyond me. The upstairs of the house was just as grand. Twin curved staircases met at a wide balcony that overlooked the massive foyer below. It was quiet now. The stillness after the party felt eerie but calming. I was drunk too, way too many mixed liquors, so I brushed my teeth with my finger and collapsed onto the guest bed fully clothed. Sleep came fast, but it didn't last. Maybe an hour later, I shot awake with my stomach doing somersaults, the kind of nausea that gives you zero warning. I ran to the bathroom and puked violently. I rinsed my mouth out and leaned against the cool sink, breathing heavily. Then I heard something. Footsteps, slow, deliberate creaking across the hardwood floor. My heart skipped. I stepped out onto the upstairs balcony, peering down into the foyer, and I saw them. A figure still silent, standing near the base of the stairs in the dark. I could feel their eyes on me, not moving, just watching. "Rob?" I called, confused and a little out of it. But then I heard it, faint snoring coming from the living room. Rob was still passed out on the couch. So who the hell was that? The figure didn't answer. Instead, I heard more movement, footsteps now echoing from the kitchen. Someone else was down there. My blood ran cold. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Hey, whoever that is, party's over. You need to go." No response. I backed away from the railing and rushed to the bedroom, quietly closing and locking the door. My hands trembled as I dialed Rob's number. It rang once, then someone picked up. "Rob," I whispered. "Rob, wake up. There's someone." No reply, just breathing. Steady, unfamiliar. Wrong. I hung up immediately and called 911. As I whispered to the operator, the doorknob to my room twisted. My breath caught. A second later, there was a gentle knock. Just one. I asked the operator, barely audible, "Should I say I'm on the phone with the police?" "No," he replied firmly. "Don't announce your presence. Say quiet." "What about my friend downstairs?" There was a pause. "Then if they think he's asleep, they'll likely leave him alone. Just stay where you are." I could hear the hesitation in his voice. He didn't know what would happen either. Minutes crawled by like hours. The operator told me officers were arriving and would try both entrances. I listened closely. Every creak, every distant noise made my heart race. Then finally, radio static. The operator confirmed. The back door was open. The police had entered. Only when they called up to me did I unlock the bedroom door and come down. Rob was still groggy, confused, barely registering what I told him. The cops searched the house from top to bottom. They found no one. No broken windows, no signs of forced entry, just emptiness, except something was missing. Not right away, but weeks later. My uncle asked about his Cartier watch, said he always kept it in the kitchen drawer. It was gone, and with it, my last shred of plausible denial.
I came clean, told him everything. He was furious, but oddly calm. He never asked me to pay for the watch, never yelled, but I was never invited to host anything at his house again. And honestly, I don't blame him. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If this story gave you chills or made you think twice about house parties, go ahead and give it a like, leave a comment, and hit that subscribe button for more real horror and suspense stories just like this one. I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe out there.